If the Russian invasion of Ukraine has taught us anything, it's that paranoia in the Western world, this idea that there is an ever-present threat on the edge of Europe to any and all members of NATO, may have been exaggerated a bit. The Russian military, and I guess by extension the Russian state as a whole, has shown the world, has shown its adversaries, that it is incompetent, corrupt, and incredibly outdated. I mean that in both a technological and an ideological sense. This is a state that is fighting with Soviet weaponry and Soviet perspectives on things in the modern day. Vladimir Putin, a former KGB agent, has made clear many times that he believes that the collapse of the Soviet Union was the worst thing that ever happened to Russia. Which from purely a domestic perspective in Russia makes sense. I mean, going from the central seat of power of effectively an empire that spanned from Asia well into Europe was a pretty good position to be in for the Russian people, particularly people in Moscow. But Russia, in the aftermath of the collapse of communism, does not even hold a candle to what the Soviet Union was. The peak of Soviet military force, which really showed off what it was capable of, would have been when the Soviet people as a collective, from Ukraine to Moscow to Kazakhstan, came together and crushed the German war machine in the Second World War. I think in the West we have this perspective that they purely won through numbers. But I don't think that's really the case. I mean, you can lose with a numbers advantage, but the Soviets really understood how to use advantages to their benefit and made use of revolutionary tactics in pushing against the Germans and grinding them into dust. The Eastern Front is the largest single theatre of any war in human history. Tens of millions of people fought and died there, soldiers, civilians. It was a horror show, the scale of violence that was happening there during World War II. And the Soviets won there. They won the largest military engagement in history. And I think there is a delusion amongst both people within modern-day Russia and people in the West that they are still capable of doing something like that. Russia, over the last 2 years, has become bogged down in a war with a country half its size in population and on its doorstep. The Russian state is failing to subjugate a nation with less than half of its population on its doorstep. You can walk from Moscow to Kiev, and they still can't conquer it. The Russians are not only failing to take over a smaller country right next to them, they're also being counter-invaded. A sizable chunk of Kursk is currently under Ukrainian occupation. This is like their Vietnam. If Vietnam somehow occupied a portion of Hawaii during its war with the United States. Vladimir Putin has made clear that he wants the Russian state to be viewed as a powerful thing that is a genuine threat. He wants a big projection of strength and some sort of sense of equal power to the West. And to do this, he's currently throwing every military resource he has at this invasion, or as he would call it, a special military operation. Do you know what the US is putting into this? The United States has contributed 1.5% of its federal budget to the Ukrainians. It is quite literally the meme of someone not even using 1% of their power. The United States, purely through financial support and advisors, has pushed Russia's impenetrable, wonderful military to a complete stalemate. This projection of strength has shown how out of sorts and outdated the Russian nation and the Russian military is. The United States is not invincible. It is very capable of losing conflicts. Just look at Afghanistan, look at Vietnam. The difference with those is they were happening on the other side of the planet. Putin cannot even project strength within 120 kilometers of his own borders. And if you look at the situation in Kursk, he can't even project strength within his borders. And of course, we can't forget the fact that last year, a private mercenary band made it within 100 kilometers of Moscow, and the Russian military couldn't stop them. This entire conflict is just an autocrat's attempt, that has backfired to prove to his enemies that he is strong. But all he's done really is prove John McCain right, who famously said that Russia is a gas station pretending to be a real country. That is Russia's strength, or rather it was, supplying energy to other nations. That's what its power was. All that this has done is proved that the hard power, the military power that we thought they had, they don't. It seems Putin and the Russians bought into their own hype and assumed that they were still the force that they were 40 years ago, but all that we've really seen is that they are the corpse of an empire refusing to accept that they're dead. So that was the video. Normally I would just end it there, but I just wanted to talk to some of the subscribers that have been really, really kind enough to support me this whole way through, making these videos, transitioning from TikTok over to YouTube. It's been really fun, and I think it is genuinely a form of content creation that I actually prefer over what I'm used to. Now, my goal is to try and make content here daily, and that can be hard because I'm mainly talking about the election or the interesting characters in it, but something interesting doesn't happen every day. And my last video, I did respond to a commenter, and that kind of gave me the point of, well, maybe I should do that a little bit more. Because it is you guys that have made this a success. And I do consider this channel a success. I mean, what has it been, 3 months and we're already halfway to 10K? So please, if there are any topics or discussions that you want to see addressed, maybe that don't even relate to the presidential election or geopolitics, I would be more than happy to hear them, because ultimately I do want to get you guys engaged more in this, and I feel like talking about the topics that you want to hear about is a good way for me to say thanks for the support that you guys have already given me.